Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. And in this video I'm going to be doing something which I usually don't do, which is responding to viewer comments. So recently I made a video about Kathleen Kennedy and Alex Kurtzman. I asked the question, who did the most damage? And I knew this would be an interesting topic to discuss, and there were some really good comments made, and I thought in this video I would respond to them and discuss them. I thought that would be fun. So let's have a look. Kirby March Barkina writes, Kathleen Kennedy may have left, but she destroyed 3 franchises: Star Wars, Willow, and Indiana Jones. Kurtzman's annihilation of the Star Trek franchise is still ongoing. Yeah, unfortunately. Now Kathleen Kennedy has left, but she's left nothing but ruins in her wake. But yeah, not only did she destroy Star Wars, she destroyed Indiana Jones and Willow. Now Star Wars will never be completely dead. I think it's still so popular that there'll always be some form of it going, whether it's in movies, TV shows, or video games, comics, or novels. I mean, there's 2 movies on the way the next year, The Mandalorian and Grogu, and that Starfighter movie. But yeah, it really does take some kind of effort to destroy one of the greatest entertainment franchises in history. The greatest entertainment franchise in history, one would say. And she didn't just do it to Star Wars. She did it to Indiana Jones and Willow. Although, let's face it, Willow was never a franchise. It's a movie that came out in 1988, and it was never intended to be a franchise. It was intended to be a one-off. But to make a TV show 30 or so years later, that was so bad, that was so woke, that not only was it cancelled after 1 season, Disney deleted it from their streaming service. You legally cannot watch that now. And Indiana Jones, now, I don't hate Indiana Jones and Destiny, but I think that's because it was not quite as bad as Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I know that's really damning with faint praise, but there are aspects of Destiny that I enjoyed. But yeah, Kathleen Kennedy's treatment of the Star Wars franchise is just crazy. I mean, but we do have to give her credit for some of the things that she did do, like Andor and Rogue One. But Kurtzman with Star Trek, he's even worse. Kurtzman seems dead set on killing Star Trek as much as he can. It is dead. I truly do think that Star Trek can never recover from what's been done to it over the last decade. Imagine if you're Paramount and you're seeing the results of what Kurtzman is doing to Star Trek. I can't believe that they're making money on these things, because these shows are just ridiculed now. There's been no Star Trek movie for the last 10 years. The TV shows are terrible. I understand that Strange New Worlds is popular, but this new one, Starfleet Academy, is the acolyte of Star Trek. I still say that Kurtzman is worse. Blinky297 writes, both were absolute disasters like you said. I have to agree with you. Disney Star Wars did have a couple of wins, really thanks to others like you pointed out, while Kurtzman Trek has been pretty much just abhorrent the whole way through. If only these clouds could come up with their own ideas instead of stealing other people's IPs like Star Trek, Star Wars, and Lord of the Rings, and just ruining them. Very good point. I mean, I've talked before about the creative bankruptcy of Hollywood, particularly Disney, because they literally cannot create anything. There's an old quote by J.R.R. Tolkien, I believe, that goes something like this: evil cannot create, it can only destroy what has already existed. There's sequels and franchises have always existed, but they're relying so much these days on sequels and franchises and IPs and book adaptations and video adaptations. It's no wonder that the industry is collapsing. These franchises have been around for decades, but at some point you have to innovate, because as time moves on, technology evolves, viewing habits evolve, technology improves, but they're just going back to the same old tired franchises. And people are sick of them. I mean, when I was growing up in the 80s, we had Star Wars and Star Trek. Kids these days are growing up these days and there's Star Wars and Star Trek. There is nothing that this generation can claim as their own, but they're just so afraid to take a risk. I said this in plenty of my videos, but Star Wars in itself was a risk back in the 70s. Star Trek was a risk. Star Trek never got the go-ahead after its pilot. The studio weren't interested. In a very, very rare move, it got a second pilot. And the rest is history. As for Star Wars, George Lucas shopped that concept around to Hollywood for years, until Alan Ladd Jr. took a chance, and the rest is history. These studios are just so afraid of taking chances. And I get it, there's more at stake these days. There's more money at stake. But if your industry is going to survive, you're going to have to take chances. People like new things. I mean, look at last year. We had Weapons and Sinners, two original films, and they did gangbusters at the box office. I mean, just as I record this, Sinners has been nominated for 16 Academy Awards, which is kind of ridiculous. It's a good movie, but it's not that good. From David Anderson, 84. As you say, it's a close race. It may be useful to label them as deconstructionists. They break down all the story, character, and visions of their prospective subjects, and do so in a heavy-handed political manner. It of course lacks any sophistication. Having good writing or direction will completely undermine their goals. On paper, it's about marketing and profit, but it's also about extreme left politics. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you would think that the job of being a franchise steward for something like Star Wars and Star Trek is to make profit. But it seems to be for Kathleen Kennedy and Alex Kurtzman, more in Alex Kurtzman's case, it's all about extreme left politics. Imagine if you're the head of a studio, you put someone in charge, you want them to manage these franchises to make money. But at least in Kathleen Kennedy's situation, I get it. On paper, it sounded like a good fit. She had prestige in being a producer on some of the most successful films in Hollywood history, like Back to the Future, Jurassic Park, the Indiana Jones movies, and her association with Spielberg. She knew powerful people. But with Kurtzman, I just don't get it. And I said this in my video, I mean, like, he's just a hack, and he's had more flops than hits. I mean, he killed the Dark Universe, Universal's Dark Universe that was supposed to start with The Mummy, and there was supposed to be this cinematic universe of Universal monsters, and the first movie out the gate was a massive flop, which he wrote and directed. And there was the Clarice Starling TV show, that was a flop, and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which was a flop. It just makes you wonder how he got put into this position. But it just goes back to what I said before, in Hollywood you fail upwards. But Alex Kurtzman is on record as saying that he doesn't see Star Trek as entertainment. He sees it as a platform for messaging. The only good thing to come out of the Kurtzman era is season 3 of Picard. And that was because of Terry Matalas. If Paramount had any sense, they would have put him in charge of the franchise from there. But no, they let him go. So Kurtzman can continue to drive Star Trek into the ground. Giza Honoran says, Kurtzman. Kennedy oversaw Lucasfilm during some incredible highs. Having some lows does not negate the highs. Kurtzman had no highs and has created the worst era of Trek to date. It's been destructive and has no Trek soul to it. There's no comparison really. Yeah, I almost completely agree with that statement, although as I said, Picard Season 3 was good. All of Discovery was terrible. In the first season of Discovery, Jason Isaacs as Captain Norca kind of made it half watchable. And Strange New Worlds got greenlit because of fan support, because no matter what you thought of Discovery, a lot of people really enjoyed Anson Mount's performance as Captain Pike. And that show, Strange New Worlds, started off okay, but yeah, it descended into woke politics as well. But yeah, Kurtzman, the last 10 years of Trek has been the worst to date. It's only when things get so bad that you look back and think, wow, we really had it so good during the Berman era. And there were some bad episodes and seasons, but Berman oversaw, 15 seasons of Star Trek? Between all the shows that he worked on and 4 movies? That's a huge workload. And no matter what happened, I always got the impression that Rick Berman respected Gene Roddenberry. That no matter what he did, he wanted to stay true to Gene Roddenberry's vision. And he cast beautiful women in his shows. He didn't cast overweight lesbians. He understood what Star Trek was about. He understood what made it popular. History will mark him down as one of the great producers of Star Trek. Ghostbusters Collector 8593 writes, the same goes for Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters has been ruined by poor decision making and terrible writing by the likes of Amy Pascal, Paul Feig, Katie Dippold, Jason Reitman, and Jill Keenan. Yeah, with Ghostbusters, it was never intended to be a franchise. You know, I mean, I remember seeing the first Ghostbusters back in the day. I loved it. It's one of the greatest comedies ever made. And the sequel was pretty good too, but you couldn't make a franchise out of that. The original Ghostbusters was like a perfectly told joke. And you tell that joke over and over again, it gets stale. And there was that terrible reboot that they had in 2016 with the female-led Ghostbusters. That was so bad. And of course, that was blamed on toxic fandom. It's a movie that people didn't ask for. And if they were going to make a Ghostbusters, they wanted the original cast back. Ghostbusters Afterlife was decent, but they messed it up with Ghostbusters Fallen Kingdom, or Frozen Empire, I think it was called. But yeah, they need to stop making Ghostbusters movies. Leave it. It's not a franchise. You just can't make anything good out of that concept. It's just so sad seeing the original actors showing up for a paycheck. And I don't blame them, but stop making Ghostbusters movies. It's not a franchise. Show Suave writes, Star Trek has never been woke because it has never been asleep. From its very beginning, it stood for diversity, equality, and the inherent dignity of every being. It was a vision of a future where differences were not feared but embraced, where respect was the foundation of civilization. Captain Kirk himself captured this truth in A Taste of Armageddon when he said, "We can admit that we're killers, but we're not going to kill today." Star Trek was always about choosing compassion over cruelty, unity over division, and progress over ignorance. So when someone claims Star Trek has gone woke, it's clear they've never truly watched it or understood what it is represented in pop culture for over half a century. And this kind of goes back to what people have always said when I criticize Star Trek being woke. I always see a response saying something along the lines of, Star Trek has always been woke. And as I've said before, Star Trek was never woke, it was progressive. There is a difference. Star Trek was progressive in the fact that it showed the best of human endeavour. It showed mostly men and some women going out to the stars and making the best of themselves. And Starfleet was made of the best of the best. They weren't clowns like the crowd that we see in Starfleet Academy. And please tell me which episode where Kirk was lectured on pronouns. Please tell me which episode of classic Trek where his bridge crew was made up of fat lesbians. Star Trek made it clear there's only two genders as well.
Why did you build a translator with a feminine voice?
We didn't.
But I heard...
The idea of male and female are universal constants, Cochrane. There's no doubt about it, the companion is female.
As for woke or not woke, I think Piers Morgan said it best, and I'll play this clip of Piers Morgan. He really explains the difference between woke and progressive in this clip.
Now, woke has got a bad rap, rightly. What it used to be was raising awareness for social and racial injustice, but that's not what it is anymore. What it's become is a kind of new form of fascism, where people who identify as woke, they want to dictate how everybody else, how they dress, how they speak, what they find funny, the jokes that they can laugh at, the books they can read, the movies they can enjoy. That is fascism. It's the very thing that they profess to hate most.
So there you go. I suggest that you read Piers Morgan's book, Woke is Dead, although I would say that it's not quite dead yet. Balrog Udon says, I've always been a bigger Trek fan, but Star Trek was a mid-budget range sci-fi show with some movies that relied on its writing and acting to do the heavy lifting. It got hit well above its weight class, that they tried to turn to a high-budget film franchise and failed, then to a streaming placeholder. Star Wars was a film epic that was a massive event. Now it's just a streaming show. Star Wars had a lot farther to fall. Yeah, I agree. I think one of the criticisms of the J.J. Abrams era is that they tried to turn Star Trek into Star Wars. Some people look at Star Trek and Star Wars and say, oh, it's set in space, it's the same thing. But they're both completely separate franchises. The only thing that they have in common is that they're set in space, and that there's spaceships, and there's space battles every now and then. But Star Trek was always about exploration. Star Wars is more space fantasy. It's a mix of science fiction and fantasy. George Lucas got his inspiration from lots of different sources like Flash Gordon, Lord of the Rings, Excalibur, Joseph Campbell. Gene Roddenberry with Star Trek, he really envisioned it as a Western in space. I mean, it's in the phrase when Kirk says the final frontier. It's about settlers going to space and exploring the frontier, meeting new people, and showing the best of humanity. The way I always describe it is, Star Trek is like classical music. Star Wars is rock and roll. They're both music, but they're completely different. And J.J. Abrams himself said that he was never a Star Trek fan. So he tried to Star Wars Star Trek up. But I have to admit, the Star Trek Kelvin timeline movies, I actually took them for what they were. Enjoyable big budget blockbuster action movies. Because they clearly set it in a separate timeline. It didn't affect the original Star Trek timeline. The problem with Kathleen Kennedy is what she did with The Force Awakens and the sequel trilogy directly affected what happened in the classic trilogy. It ruined the legacy of the original characters. But what can you do? So next comment, Mike Hill 1114 says, Kurtzman, but hold on. That's because George Lucas had already nicked Star Wars into a rubbish bin first. Kennedy just piled some garbage on top, but it was already a lost franchise. Yeah, I completely disagree with that one, Mike Hill 1114. Star Wars was not a dead franchise in 2015, 2013. It finished strong at the movies in 2005 with Revenge of the Sith. Despite what some prequel haters will tell you, it was a huge success. It's very popular. It's even more popular today than it ever was. And it's seen as one of the best Star Wars films now. Certainly the best of the prequel trilogy era. And then there was the Clone Wars animated series, which had its own fan base. There's an entire generation of fans who've grown up watching the animated series. And you had breakout stars like Ahsoka Tano, who got her own show, as bad as it was. But Star Wars was never dead. In fact, there was nothing but excitement for Star Wars coming back in 2015. And the only reason The Force Awakens made over $2 billion was because of the legacy that George Lucas created. But Kathleen Kennedy took that legacy and squandered it slowly over the course of the last 10 years. And now we're at a point where Star Wars hasn't been on screen for 6 years because she can't get a movie made. Disney spent $4 billion getting the franchise, and they were on record as saying, oh, we want a new Star Wars movie in the theatre at least once a year. But it's been 6 years now. Still waiting on that Patty Jenkins Rogue Squadron movie. And they finally admitted that Rian Johnson trilogy that was announced in 2017 before The Last Jedi came out, that never happened either. You can't deny the failure that she has had with this franchise. Although she has, as I've said before, had some successes, like Rogue One and Andor, first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, which were great. Okay, one more. Russell T Davies did the same with Doctor Who. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Doctor Who fan, but I have watched the coverage of what's happened to Doctor Who. The likes of Nerdrotic and Critical Drinker would probably say that Doctor Who has been wokeified even worse than Star Wars and Star Trek. And Doctor Who is dead. I mean, I've never seen a single episode of Doctor Who, but it's been quite entertaining seeing what's happened to it and the discourse around it. They just made the Doctor gay, and the actor involved just told people not to watch, so they didn't. Disney funded the last 2 seasons of Doctor Who, and now they pulled their funding because it got so woke, it got so unwatchable that people switched off. And the one thing that it has in common besides that with the current era of Trek is that people are finally turning off to Kurtzman Trek. Whatever viewers they had left are not watching Starfleet Academy. Gary from Nerdrotic had a live stream of a Spock action figure which had more views than the free episode of Starfleet Academy that they put on YouTube. How embarrassing is that? So yeah, as I said in my video, Star Wars and Star Trek are in big trouble. At least Kathleen Kennedy is gone, but Alex Kurtzman is still there. And until they get rid of that guy, Star Trek is never coming back. And if they do get rid of him, I don't think Star Trek can return from this. I think both franchises need a rest period. They need to be vaulted for at least 10 years and then brought back with full reboots. No different timelines, just a straight up reboot for each franchise. And spend the next 10 years coming up with new stuff. Because if Hollywood doesn't evolve and come up with new stories, new characters, new ideas, the industry is going to collapse. Some say it's already collapsed. Just look at the cinema takings. People aren't going to the movies anymore. People have turned to video games. People have turned to streaming. I would like to see Star Wars and Star Trek get good again. There's nothing that I would like more than to talk about Star Wars and Star Trek, because I'm a huge fan. I was a huge fan. But under the current leadership, it's just going to continue to die a slow, painful death. Thanks again for everyone who made a comment, even if I didn't agree with all of them. That's the whole point of discussion. We might disagree. We have fun doing it. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Share this video out there, and I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.